name is Roger Albert, and this is the second episode in the North Island College Telecourse Introduction to Sociology. Before we do anything this week, the program is called Thinking Sociologically, by the way. Before we do anything, I want to give you a few statements, and I want to suggest to you whether or not you agree with these statements or not. Now, let's just go through a bunch of them. And the first one is, Canadian politicians are in control of the Canadian economy. Canadian politicians are in control of the Canadian economy. Their decisions determine whether we have prosperity or poverty. Would you agree or disagree with that? The second statement I want you to consider is, generally, people on welfare are poor because they're lazy or stupid, or maybe both. Would you agree or disagree with that statement? The next one is, Canada is a democratic society, and there is equality of opportunity in Canada. I know that's two statements. You can agree or disagree with either one or both of them. Canada is a democratic society. There is equality of opportunity in Canada. The next one, only a stable family can ensure the successful upbringing of children. Only a stable family can ensure the successful upbringing of children. Is that true or is that false? Or is that, do you agree or disagree? Unemployment is bad for society. There's work for everybody out there, but most unemployed people are too lazy to go out and get work, or they won't start at the bottom. Agree or disagree? The next statement is got to do with being sick. Illness is a technical term, an objective fact. In matters of health and illness, the doctor is the expert and knows best. Illness is a technical term, an objective fact. In matters of health and illness, the doctor is the expert and knows best. Agree or disagree? The next one has to do with this medium. Television has a bad influence on children. Violence on TV is a possible cause of delinquency. Television has a bad influence on children. Violence on TV is a possible cause of delinquency. Do you agree or disagree with that statement? And the last one is, the high divorce rate indicates that marriage as an institution is threatened, especially as more unmarried couples are living together. The high divorce rate indicates that marriage as an institution is threatened, especially as more unmarried couples are living together. All right, do you agree or do you disagree with that? So that's a few statements. There's 8 of them there, or 9 of them. And I could think of a whole lot more. A lot of them come from a book I'll show you later called Sociology for Everyone by Martin Joseph. And that's an interesting book. There are tons of books in sociology, and I'm going to show some of them to you over the next few weeks. I'll bring a selection of sociology textbooks and books with me as I come in the next few weeks on the live broadcasts. Now, these statements that you've just seen, some of them are false, downright false, and some of them are just open to different interpretations. Not one of those statements is true in every sense. Not one of them is true in every sense. What sociologists do is they set out to question our assumptions. Our assumptions, our common sense, if you like, about the world we live in. We established research techniques and controlled studies to try to figure out what's going on. There are fairly standard ways that sociologists have devised to study society and to study people's behavior. And there's many different kinds of sociologies and many different kinds of sociologists too, and we'll talk about that. And of course, sociologists aren't only involved in studying society, we're also involved in teaching. And one of the things that we do is we struggle a lot with the best ways of explaining things to, especially to first-year students, and how to introduce to people the study of society. And it's really never easy, because we've got to struggle against uninformed opinion, common sense, ideology, prejudice of all kinds, habits. Let me take the example of the question that I had before, or the statement that Canada is democratic. I want to examine that just for a second before I go on. To say that Canada is democratic, well, first of all, you have to question the two terms, Canada and democracy. But let's just look at that term for a second. If Canada is democratic, how is it democratic? Let's look at that just for 1 second. And look at your life. Okay, how many different things do you do in your daily life? You go to work, you sleep, you eat, you have relations with your family, you go out to the restaurant, etc., etc., etc. How much of your life, how many of those activities are actually conducted on the basis of democratic principles? Let me just check that out. Let's think about our work. How many of you people, how many of us work in what we call democratic situations? I know I personally don't. I have certain responsibilities and certain, there's a certain hierarchy, if you like, of responsibility within North Island College and within most organizations, and we have bosses, and the bosses don't necessarily treat us very democratically. We're told virtually what to do, or told when to do it, etc., etc. So our work situation, our work lives sure aren't based on any kind of democratic principles, and that's a third of our life. Okay, so if in a third of our life, right off the top, there's no democracy in this country. Okay. In the family, I think that we could argue pretty strongly in most families that there's not a whole lot of democracy either, even with the feminist movement, even with all this rhetoric and all this mythologizing about equal relations between men and women in the family. Most families, what you've got is still the situation where the man makes the decisions and the women just follow along. You know, that's basically what's still happening to a very large extent. Maybe not in the yuppiedom, but in most of society, that's what's still happening. So how are we and when are we democratic? Well, we're democratic. I suppose you could say that we're democratic because we go vote once a year or once every 4 or 5 years and for different governments. Well, that's fine. And presumably that goes along with the rule by the majority and all that kind of thing. Well, okay, that's fine. But I think there's still a lot of room to question just how democratic is our society, and in what ways is it democratic? Is it democratic in every way? No, it's not. It's not. It's maybe, in a small sense, politically democratic, but that's all. That's all. The rest of our lives are mostly based on autocratic relationships, and that's just the way it is. But we still say Canada's a democracy, and then we expect that concept, that word, that idea, pervades everything. It doesn't. Of course not. It doesn't. But then we use that as a screen to see everything else. One of the things that happens in sociology is, unlike physics or biology, unlike physics or chemistry or those kinds of sciences, although, in biology we do have human bodies and we know something about them, we don't necessarily know the inner workings like a biologist or a doctor would. In sociology, we all live in society, so we figure we all know a lot about it. I mean, I live in society, I do all these things. I know quite a lot about it, so it's hard to convince people that they don't know anything about it. That, to a very large extent, our perceptions of what the world, how the world works and the world is, come from our common sense. And our common sense comes from what we consider in our tribe to be commonsensical, and natural, but that's only from a perspective of our particular tribe, if you like. It's not real and true for everybody on the face of the earth for all time. I think one of the first tasks of sociology in teaching sociology is to try to break people, to break down the belief that we all have, break down our common beliefs, our common prejudices, our common reliance on common sense, etc., uninformed opinion, break that down, and to adopt, in a sense, a perspective of the alien. It's not easy. And I want to talk about that, but there's a few other things I want to do today too, and I'm going to outline those right now. The first thing is I want to give you some information on readings, on some of the readings and the assignments for this week. I'm not going to go into detail, I'll just give you some information on them. The second, I want to do the objectives for the program, what we want to do today. Third, I want to talk about sociology. That's what this series is all about. And then we'll give you a chance to phone in for about 18-20 minutes or so in the second half of the program, because this program is coming to you live. And then I'll give you the registration information again. If you missed the registration information last week, then we'll give it to you once more. This program, or the first program in the series, was broadcast live originally on, last Tuesday at this time, and it was repeated last night at 5:30. If you caught the repeat program last night, it's different from this one. This is the second program in the series, and it's coming to you live from the studios of the Knowledge Network in Vancouver. Now, if you're registered in the course, if you registered last week or whatever, and you still haven't got your materials, I would suggest that you just be patient. It's not, if you don't get them before next week, it's not a big tragedy. You won't be behind for long. You've got 6 months to complete this course. And of course, if you intend to take this course and the one that's scheduled to begin in January, the second half of this first year Introduction to Sociology series, then you're going to want to finish this telecourse before Christmas. And that means you have to pretty well go through the materials in the way that we've prescribed that you go through them. We've organized the assignments to actually permit you to finish the course before Christmas. And this is how we've done it. You've got four essay type and short answer kinds of assignments, and then you've got an exam on December 11th we've scheduled. So the first assignment is worth 10% of your final mark. We build on the amount of the value of the assignment. So assignment 1 is worth 10%. It's due after week 3. So it should be due sometime in a couple weeks. Assignment 2 is worth 15% of the final mark, and it's due after week 6. Assignment 3 is 15% due after week 9, and assignment 4 is 20% due after week 13, so that's due right towards the end of the program, or the end of the series, the end of the telecourse. And then the exam, if everything goes according to plan, you'll write the exam on December the 11th, and that's worth 40% of your final mark. If everything does not go according to plan, you don't get your materials, or for some reason there's a delay of some kind or other, then we'll reschedule that exam for you. By the way, for those of you who registered for the course, you'll receive in your package an envelope that says "Open Me First." And that has in it some information for you, the schedules for the telecourse, and also some information on how to set up your exam. For those of you who are living in Kamloops or Vancouver or wherever else, you'll have to find someone to supervise the exam for you at a library or college or school, wherever you can find somebody who's reputable, a police officer, your minister, somebody who can vouch for the fact that you're not going to cheat on the exam. Of course, I know you're not going to anyway, but we need somebody to supervise the exam. And then you'll send in that form, and we'll send that person the exam. And we'll decide on a date on which to write it. We're pretty flexible about these things too, so don't worry about it too much. Now, the assignments are all fairly straightforward. If you have any questions about the content of the assignment, please don't hesitate to give me a call. Please phone me at North Island College. And the phone number is 1-800-663-0190. That's my phone number at North Island College. If you want to reach me there, it's 1-800-663-0190. And you can reach me there tomorrow afternoon, Wednesday afternoons, Thursday afternoons, Friday afternoons are good. And next week, you should be able to reach me there Monday afternoon, Monday morning, Monday afternoon, and Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday afternoons are the best time to phone. And Thursday evenings too. If you can't phone during the day, I'll be available this Thursday evening between 7 and 9, and next Thursday evening, pretty well throughout the whole series between 7 and 9 on Thursday evenings. Please don't hesitate to phone, all right? I'm not going to bite your head off. If I'm here to help you and we'll want to get you through the course, don't be shy about phoning me, okay? Don't be shy about phoning me. Now, the readings for this unit, and this is Unit 2, actually this is Unit 1, we're on the first unit. They're not very extensive, and they include a whole lot of short excerpts from books. If you're registered, you'll know that you've got readings from Hastings, and Hastings is quite important to read, how to think sociologically. A fairly important set of readings. I'd read those fairly carefully. The Weishart and Reichman series of articles is I wouldn't recommend you read them. They're not that interesting, for one thing. They're not that simple to read, so you might want to just do a quick look at those. Don't have to read them through carefully. The Broom and Selznick article on how to read a table is important, and I read that one pretty carefully. It's pretty simple to read, not too difficult. How to read a table. And the article by C. Wright Mills, although it might be a little bit difficult to read, I'd strongly suggest you read it anyway, because it's very important on how to think sociologically, how to relate biography, your own biography, what's going on in your own life, to all these things that are happening in society, what the historical development of society, how do you fit? I mean, how do you relate to the situation that's happening in Oka, Quebec right now. What's your relationship to that? What's your relationship to the election of an NDP party, the NDP party in Ontario? What's your relationship to Dome Petroleum, or to Inco, or to the Brompton brothers? What's your all these huge, massive kinds of concerns? How do you relate your biography to them? How do you relate your need to work with the labor market as a whole? That's another good one. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that the readings for this unit aren't going to be important for the, well, some of them you're going to need for the assignment, but you're not going to be, and maybe a little bit for the exam, but they're not that important. You can probably get away with reading the unit rather than reading the articles themselves, reading your unit booklets. Why do you want to read them? Well, I think probably just to get a feel for sociology as a discipline, to get a feel for, just to become familiar with some of the concepts of sociology. One of the things that sociology does to people right at the beginning is to confuse people royally, because it's a whole different vocabulary, and that means that a lot of the words you're not going to be familiar with, and it's going to be confusing. So you have to be prepared for that new vocabulary. So you might as well just get into it and start playing with the vocabulary and thinking about it. Now, the objectives for today's program are there are just 4 simple objectives. First of all, to outline the assignments for the course. I've done that, and the readings for this week. We've already covered that one. The second objective is to talk about sociology as a scientific method of analyzing society. We've talked a little bit about that. We'll get into that more. And the third is to look at what it means to take the perspective of the alien. That's fun. We'll talk about that more too. And the last one is to situate sociological thinking in the world in which we live. How do we situate sociological thinking in the world in which we live? Now, the course writers, Robert Drislane and Gary Parkinson, focus on they focus on sociological thinking and how it differs from ordinary thinking. They note that sociology is an inherently controversial discipline, and that sociology really is a guide to try to understand society, for trying to understand society rather than a prescription. And they pose questions themselves in this unit, about sociology and about what this whole thing is about. And some questions that they ask about the world in which we live, like, for example, how is it possible for large groups of individuals to live together in stable, ordered societies? That's an interesting question. It's not as simple as it might seem. And does Canada have a distinct culture? Does Canada have a distinct culture? How do we deal with that? How do we prove or disprove that? Then they also ask, or rather they suggest, and I think this is interesting too, and I agree with them, but I think it's important to really think about this. They suggest that if you learn to think seriously about social issues, you will undergo a transformation. To learn sociology means to develop an understanding of the links between the lives of individuals, your own life, and their society, your own society and culture. Your study of sociology will raise questions about your attitudes and beliefs as you relate your individual life to its social and historical context. Now, I definitely agree with them on that particular statement. Because to me, sociology means to be consistently critical. And by critical, I don't mean fault-finding here. I just mean critical in the sense of breaking down the arguments and statements and assumptions that we all make, the basic assumptions underlying political statements and policies, social policies, to try to separate fact from opinion, to try to track down, and this is where it's really a lot of fun, to try to track down the interests that are served by various social actions, by various social facts. Who benefits from certain kinds of activities? Who benefits from certain kinds of events that happen in society? Now, some of the basic questions that interest me are things like, what's patriotism? Well, everybody knows what patriotism is. It's love. What is patriotism? Why do people love their countries? Okay, and even willing to die for them. I mean, you can see this now in the Gulf. The American news broadcasts show all these wonderful young soldiers over there saying, "Yeah, you know, get those guys, and I'm willing to die for their own country." What does that? What does that mean? What is a country that deserves our love? What is love? What's friendship? What's disease? What's normal? What's abnormal? What's death? What's crime? What's crime? Well, everybody knows what crime is. Oh yeah? What is it? And is it punishable? Yes, it's definitely punishable. Is it preventable? What is crime? Let's just for a second. What is crime? Well, how do we understand crime? Crime is an act against the law. Simply, it's something that people do that's against the law, against the legal. So therefore, if you have a law, in order to think about, in order to think of crime, you have to also think about law. Who decides what the laws are? Who decides what's going to be criminal activity? Because there's not one act in the whole history of mankind that's ever been done that's by its very nature criminal. There's nothing that you can do. Kill someone, steal, anything. There's not one thing that you can do that's by its very self criminal. We have to determine socially, and that something is legal or not legal, and something therefore is criminal and not criminal. And who decides, who makes the laws? Who decides that that something is criminal in one case and not criminal in another? Who decides that murder in one circumstance is fine and murder in another circumstance is not? I mean, who does that? Do we do it? All of us? Or are there certain groups of people who have more say in what laws are passed and what laws aren't passed? I've got questions about all kinds of things, including the value of human life. What's the value of human life? Those are important questions. I got a lot of questions. I don't have too many final answers about all these things. Some tentative ones, some tentative ones. We can, through sociology, begin to search for the truth. And I think sociology is a search for the truth, with the emphasis on search. Once you stop searching for the truth, you're involved in something else than sociology. Then you're involved in belief structures. And sociologists really believe, but only tentatively believe. We don't usually believe in absolute truth. Now, what I'd like you to think about, just think that you've just arrived from the planet. You've just arrived from the planet Uzbek, okay? And Uzbek is way gone in another part of our galaxy, and you're just wandering around the galaxy in this spaceship, and all of a sudden you run across this little planet, the third one in the star system of our particular sun, this thing that we call our sun. Now, what would you see when you arrive? Well, you'd come down in your little spaceship, and the closer you'd get, you'd see there's all the clouds and all this stuff. You've seen the blue planet, you've seen that thing, the pictures of Earth from up high. You come down and you see the continents, and then if you came down over America, for example, you'd see slowly but surely you'd start to be able to make out cities and all these little things moving along the surface of the Earth, and you wonder. You see, you don't know what they are. You don't have any signs or symbols. You don't have any names for anything. You don't know that a car is a car because you don't have the symbol system. You don't have the culture. That tells you what something is and what it means, what its significance is. So, what do you actually see? What do you actually see when you come down? Well, you see a lot of people. Again. You don't know what they are. You don't call them people because you don't know that's what they are. You see a lot of little things moving, getting in and out of other things that are moving. We call them cars, trucks, buses, whatever you want. You see a lot of little things moving inside other little things, and they go from one place to another place. And all of these things, and it's all happening. It's all happening all over the place. People are getting into little things that are actually moving on water, and some are getting into little things that move on these little ribbons. They're called track. We call them track. You see all kinds of things happening. Now, you don't have any clue at all as to what all this means. You have no clue, right? You don't have any context in which to try to understand what's going on here. You don't have any context at all. You might walk into, for example, you'd come straight down on the planet, you'd find a place to land that was more or less safe, and you'd ask, You might walk into a factory, you might walk into a grocery store and you see people putting things in little containers and wheeling them around. How do you understand all of that? How do you make sense of it if you don't have any context in which to understand it? That's what I'm asking you to do in sociology, is to put yourself right out of your own culture, to try to ask questions of your culture, not to accept any truth that you know, that you believe in now. Nothing. And try to turn everything, all your beliefs, all your statements of value, all your beliefs, all your practices into question marks. Now, if you just tuned in, my name is Roger Albert, and this is the North Island College Telecourse Introduction to Sociology. Now, before we open the phone lines, I want to just discuss the sociological perspective for a second. I want to comment on how the course is organized, this particular course is organized, and really how most introductory courses are organized. What happens is, with most sociology courses, is first of all, you have chapters that include, first of all, statements about sociology itself, its methods and perspectives. Okay, so that's the first thing. All sociology courses start off with a chapter on sociology itself, its method and perspectives. Then they go on and look at the relationship between biology and society. All right, you got all these human chunks, these human things running around. What's the relationship between that and the society in which they organize themselves, social relations that they create? 3, they have a discussion of culture. Now, culture, I'll get into that in a minute. Culture is that invisible baggage that we all carry, that in our heads, that how to interpret the world around us. Then socialization, how we acquire that culture. Then there's often chapters on social structure, how we organize ourselves for socialization and for change and for just to simply keep the society going. Now, so those are the main areas. You're going to get those in all sociology courses. And then they're going to follow that with a whole list of topics. Okay, now sociology textbooks will deal with all kinds of topics, and so this is a list of some of them, and they're really at the discretion of the course authors. You'll get the economy and society will be a topic, the family, crime and deviance will be topics, work and formal organizations, and then invariably education, inequality and class, gender differences, ethnicity and subgroups, subcultures, religious groups, urbanization and urbanism, moved cities, population and demographics, and political organization. Those are 12 quite common chapter headings, if you like, in sociology textbooks. And there are others, of course. And sometimes they aren't organized quite that way, but invariably those kinds of topics are going to come up in a sociology textbook. Now, not necessarily exactly the way I lay them out here, but this particular course is organized, has 8 major chapters or units. The first one is called the Sociological Imagination. Then the second one is called Culture. The third, Socialization. The fourth, Social Structure and Ideology. The fifth, Inequality. The sixth, Pre-industrial and Industrial Societies, the difference between primitive and modern societies. The seventh, The Rise of Capitalism. And the eighth, the Sociology of Capitalism. Now, the logic behind this kind of organization is quite simple, really. And what happens is, first you're introduced to the discipline itself and its methods, pretty straightforward. Then the idea that as individuals we're born into a society, really into a world as a package of potentialities. We don't have a personality, or we don't have an identity when we're born, and we acquire, and that's our biology, a biological aspect of this, if you like, and we acquire culture as through socialization. Okay, so we acquire culture through socialization. So that's the logic of looking at biology, the biological aspect, and then culture, and then socialization. It's logical, quite logical. Now, and then of course we look at, once the basics are covered, then we can start looking at how the institutional areas of society, how we organize ourselves for socialization, for the maintenance and transmission of social organization, and the culture and acquisition of culture. And those are institutions such as schooling, educational institutions, the family, the economy, politics, law, art, etc., etc., etc. And those areas are covered in the second half of this first year series. that will begin in January. So those topics are covered in the second course, if you like. Now, the units on pre-industrial society suggest that the authors really of this particular series, of this course, have a pretty historical, they've got a historical bent. They want to look at society and the development of society historically. And we also look at the three major early sociologists. They didn't call themselves sociologists necessarily, but they were very influential. Marx, Durkheim, and Weber. The three biggies in sociology, if you like, Marx, Durkheim, and Weber. If you take sociology and you study sociology, you'll hear those names over and over and over again. Now, what I want to do now is, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to open the phone lines, but I want to set the stage for that before I do that. What I want you to do is to think about the concepts of competition and cooperation. We really pride ourselves in this society as having a competitive capitalist system where everybody goes out and competes, you know, for jobs and for product and for everything, okay? Well, I want you to think about that. And we usually consider cooperation to be the opposite of competition. But are they really? Are cooperation and competition the opposites of one another? Can they happen simultaneously? If you're an alien again, you're coming from the planet Uzbek again, and you come into BC Place Stadium. Okay, so you cut a little hole in the cloth there, and you come in, and there's a football game happening, and the BC Lions, of course, losing as usual. And what would you deduce? What would you make of this activity? I mean, you're from the planet Uzbek. You've never been. Of course, you know that the Lions are losing. But apart from that, what do you make of this activity? You're looking down here, and these people are doing weird things with this little ball, and they're throwing it around. How do you make any sense of this? I mean, how do you figure out what's going on here? Now, during the phone-in, I want you to think about that and to talk about. We can talk about the whole notion of cooperation and competition and what that means, what it means sociologically. We can also talk about anything else that I've brought up in this program before. If you have any questions about the course, feel free to phone. And if you want to phone, the phone numbers are 228-1411. If you're calling from the Lower Mainland area, that's 228-1411. And if you're calling from outside the Lower Mainland area, it's 1-800-663-1277. That's 1-800-663-1277. Call right now. We'll be right back after this.
Flax was a very important crop in pioneer days. The fiber was spun into thread and used to weave household linens and clothing. The flax was harvested when the base of the stem turned yellow. It was pulled out by the roots to take advantage of the fiber's full length. If a fine quality linen was desired, the crop was harvested as soon as the seeds had set. The seed pods were removed by drawing the bundles through a ripple. The pods were threshed and winnowed and used for next year's seeds, animal feed, or as a source of oil. Dew retting was a common method used to rot the stem so the fiber was not injured and could be separated from the bark and the inner part of the stem. The bundles were crushed by a brake so the chaff would fall away and leave the fibers. The flax was further cleaned by scutching or swingling against a board or log. The final cleaning was by hackling or hetchling. These teeth straightened the fibers and removed any short fibers and chaff that remained. When finished, the fibers were as soft and silky as hair and arranged on the distaff of a spinning wheel and spun into thread.
Welcome back to Introduction to Sociology live in the studio. My name is Roger Albert. If you want to call, if you have any questions about this course, or if you want to talk about the topic I just brought up, which is competition and cooperation. The phone number is 228-1411, 228-1411, if you're calling from anywhere in the Lower Mainland area. If you're calling from outside the Lower Mainland area, it's toll-free, it won't cost you a cent. And the phone number is 1-800-663-1277. That's 1-800-663-1277. We've got a call now from Donna in Vernon. Hello, Donna.
Hello. This may not be related to your to what you're talking about, but it sounds like it. I am confused as to what to take in the area that I am interested in. Like I'm interested in taking a course in lands claims.
In lands claims?
Yes.
Yes.
So would that be pertinent to, or would that be a basis for my, or like an education towards that?
It depends on what aspect of lands claims you're interested in. If you're interested in the legal aspects, if you want to become a lawyer,
well, I want to be an advocate.
You want to be an advocate?
Yes.
Well, there's all kinds of ways that you can do that. I guess what you're asking me is what kind of credibility do I need to become an advocate for lands claims?
Yes.
There's two ways I can answer that. The first one is that it has to come from inside of you. In order to be an advocate for land claims, you have to strongly believe in land claims and have the self-confidence and the ability to go out there and to say what you believe and to believe that you're right in doing so. Now, that's different from learning as much as you possibly can about land claims, and there's all kinds of issues involved with land claims that aren't directly legal questions. There are all kinds of sociological questions involved. There are all kinds of issues that would involve, say, political science, the issues of politics, issues of economics, issues of the structure of different kinds of native societies, as well as capitalist, the predominant capitalist society. There's all kinds of things that you could learn that would be useful in dealing with land claims. So I think that the more information you can gather, the more you're going to be able to make reasonable decisions about what kinds of things you want to do in terms of strategy for land claims, for advocating land claims. You see, what happens with a lot of us is that we have a belief in a certain thing, and some people get into politics for this reason, is we have a strong belief in a particular social value, something we value, something we think is right. But it's at a gut level. We don't really know how to explain it to other people. We don't really know the real basis of it. We know in our guts that we're right and that there's something here that we should be advocating, but we don't have a lot of knowledge of the subject except at the gut level. And that's not going to get you very far when you're arguing with lawyers, or you're arguing with politicians, or you're trying to figure out strategies for dealing with these things. So
that's why I wanted to get as much knowledge as I can, so that I will have facts to work on.
Well, in that case, what you need is, you don't necessarily have to work towards a university degree or anything like that. I mean, it's nice to have a university degree, but if you're looking for knowledge, or in terms of trying to develop some strategies, then you're going to want to take courses in sociology, in political science, in economics. Economics sounds pretty strange stuff, but you got to know some of this stuff. Courses in law. You don't have to take advanced courses. You can take some basic courses in law, at least to understand the basis of the legal principles on which land claims are established. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and a lot of places you can start. The main thing you have to continue with is the questioning attitude. When you do research, you have to keep questioning, and you have to keep questioning your own assumptions all the time also, because that's how you refine your point of view all the time, is by maintaining a questioning attitude towards your own perspective, towards your own assumptions, towards what you think are your own interests. So the more courses you take, the more knowledge you gather, the more insight you get, the better able you are to then develop strategies that you're going to, whatever kinds of strategies you need.
So what do you suggest is the best route to start with?
Well, it's not a simple process, not at all. It takes time and it takes a lot of effort.
I know.
Yeah. That's one thing I can guarantee you. I went to university for, well, from 1971 until 1981, and I got 2 university degrees in that period of time, a master's degree, a bachelor's degree to start with, and a master's degree. So it's going to take you probably 3 to 4 years to get the basic kind of knowledge, basic information you need to really have a consistent perspective on the issue of land claims and to be able to argue effectively.
Yeah.
So it's going to take time, and while you're doing that, of course, your eyes aren't shut to all kinds of other things that are happening, and you gather information, you do all kinds of research on what happens in the media, etc. You prepare yourself. What you're doing is you're arming yourself. You're preparing yourself with knowledge.
Yes. So the course that you offer now, sounds like it might be a good place to start then.
I would suggest that it is a good place to start, yes. Because what we're doing is offering a perspective that is a critical perspective. It's a perspective that gives you different points of view on society, on how things work. And we will be talking about culture and native issues throughout the whole series, yes.
Okay,
So,
am I too late for this course?
no, you're not, and that's a good point. I'm going to give you, we're going to keep the phone lines open for a little while, and then we'll take a bit of a break, and then I'll give you the registration information at the end of the program.
Okay, I'm currently working with Okanagan College.
Yeah?
I've registered for the anthropology course, but it doesn't sound like it's what I need, so I'm going to cancel that and go into the sociology.
Anthropology could be quite interesting.
It's a broad spectrum, though, isn't it?
It is a very broad spectrum. I also teach anthropology. One of the things at North Island College, but anthropology is a very wide ranging kind of course, study of man in very broad terms. I think you learn a lot from anthropology too, depending on how it's being taught, and etc., the kinds of materials that are using. That's always important. Sociology deals more with industrial societies, deals more with current issues, deals more with things that are happening. So I guess it's a decision you have. I would suggest that you take anthropology and sociology, down. Eventually, you're going to want to take as much as you can.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for your call. Again, if you want to call, the phone numbers are 228-1411.